Oh yeah,
What's up?
back at it,
No doubt, no
back
doubt.
at it. And we're about to have a heavy discussion tonight, guys.
Let's hope. Let's see what we
Real
do.
heavy.
Okay.
All right, let's jump right in. Greetings, everybody. My name is Isaac Castellez. I'm here with my brothers Timothy Hampton and the Bayuni Dukes. Together, we are 360 Collective. And if you want to know more about us, check our website, 360collective.online, or our Facebook page. You can learn more about us there. We want to jump right into this conversation about Donald J. Trump. We got about an hour and 20 minutes to spend with you. We hope that you jump into the conversation, you respond in the comments, let us know that you're here, tell us what you're thinking. We will respond the best we can to the comments as you make them. But we have a really, really engaging, interesting conversation for you tonight. We hope that you enjoy it. So with that, guys, the title of this conversation is the Trump Conundrum. The Trump Conundrum. Right. And so when you think about a conundrum, you think about something that is difficult to unravel, something that is difficult to wrap your head around, something that is slippery, challenging, and almost impossible to solve. Right. So with that said, I'm wondering why do we call Donald Trump a conundrum? Why do we title this conversation the Donald Trump Conundrum? Amari, why don't you start us off with this one? What are you thinking, man?
Let's get into it. First of all, let's talk about it. So, I think that this conversation probably we could have had this conversation 8 years ago when it probably went before it all started, right? But I think that when it first happened, his belief of coming to the presidency or coming to elections or coming to politics to change it from what it has been for so long. It was so much of this network of who this rubbing shoulders with so and so people and just making the deals behind closed doors. And some of that came at this time to drain the swamp. Let's get more like ordinary people involved into politics because it's going to more or less benefit them. So that's the platform that he ran on. And I think it appealed to so many people, but at the same time it was totally different of how politics was, how it was ran. So I think that was it. I want at that time talking about 8 years of Obama. So it was that type of backlash coming from there. You think about people just wanting to change, right? And so he spoke on speaking that change, right? So I think that's what people gravitate towards to. He's speaking on I want to make a change. People believe that. The conundrum was more or less is that even if we look at it now is that he gave more of the same, and I think that that's pretty much where we are now. But I think the disruptive part of it is that he's disrupting politics as if more or less not realizing that for him personally he's running for his own benefit. I think that's what people are maybe I'm saying they're not seeing or what's really being said. And maybe when I say his own benefit, maybe I should say his own kind benefit. A certain level of a politician, as in or like this, like maybe even talking about like founding of this nation, politics just for a certain group of people, and that's typically rich white people, and letting that be the foundation of what he's talking about. And even when politics first started, even this country first began, it really was just for those rich white people, but the ability of making poor white people believe that was great for rich white people is also would be the benefit of poor white people.
Yeah. So let me share this, and then Tim, I know you have something to share. You have a thought as well on this, but on that thought, Amari, I want to elaborate a little bit more on the allure of Donald Trump. The promotion of him as an outsider to Washington politics, that he was going to go to Washington and get rid of all the corruption, because there's one thing that no matter your political affiliation or how you describe yourself politically, one thing that everyone can agree on is that Washington politics are corrupt, deeply corrupt, and deeply influenced by multinational corporations, big business interests, and by money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a unifying belief among most Americans about the politics in this country. He was able to tap into that, particularly with rural white people in the middle states, not in the big cities, but in places, from in between the West Coast and the East Coast, outside of the big cities. People in Kansas and Kentucky, like our good friend here, J.D. Hall. This is a guy who lives in Kentucky and is quoted in the USA Today as saying that he hasn't seen the country go in the direction that he wanted it to go. And he voted for Biden in 2020, and now he plans to vote for Donald Trump. The thing here that I think is important is that last piece there in italics, that rural voters tend to say that the economy is in horrible shape and that their communities are doing worse than America overall, and that they have yet to financially recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a group of people, we're talking about rural poor whites, whom the Democratic Party has almost no relationship with whatsoever. And so I think that there's an allure among my people and people who look like me, who are in that socioeconomic condition, that like the idea of someone outside of Washington going to Washington and cleaning it up, so to speak. Now, we know that's not what he did, but that's what he said he was going to do. And I think everything that has happened since then, the trials, the indictments, he can spin all of that to promote this image of himself as an outsider, as a renegade, as a maverick. So that's another part of the conundrum, the thing that makes him so popular on the one hand, but I think also so destructive in the other. So yeah.
I got a question with that. I know that they're saying that like people are in those areas are still willing to vote for him for the third time. Do you think that they find themselves in the corner? Sometimes with this, it became so right or left, so black or white that people either I done said A, now I got to run A out, versus being logical. Let me see. Well, he didn't work out. They put so much in the sand. They done dug their thoughts right in the sand so much that they can't pivot. Could that still be? Could that be a problem for people?
What do you think, Tim?
Sorry about that. First of all, let me apologize for the spackle on the wall. The studio is being renovated. Second of all, let me piggyback off something. The Drain the Swamp title that was there. That was attractive to Americans when he first started talking about it. But I think what none of them realized, and what a lot of us missed, is that in reference to draining a swamp, is that he himself is a swamp creature. It's just a different swamp. It's the billionaire celebrity playboy swamp that he comes from, which is by no means a better swamp. It's probably worse, because at least politicians have to pretend they have a moral code. Donald Trump never had that in his whole career. Okay. He never had to pretend he had a moral code, because nobody cares. He's a billionaire playboy. Not a traditional politician. No, he wasn't. But a maverick, a renegade, he also was not. Mavericks do well. Renegades often succeed. That would have been an attractive attribute for Donald Trump if he had ever been good at anything else except celebrity. Everything he touched turned to manure his whole life.
Everything.
So, aside from his dad giving him over $200 million or something like that, I don't remember. The Maverick thing, the renegade thing, Drain the Swamp, all that would have been good if he wasn't a swamp creature who had never really succeeded at anything. Now, I believe, like you said, Dukes, they hitched their wagon to this guy so hard. And we saw the same phenomenon, I think, with George Bush when he declared victory in Iraq.
Right, exactly.
He's
To
like
the
the
extent
commander in chief cannot waver. I think these people cannot waver because they've hitched their wagons to Donald Trump based on some things I think we'll discuss later in the in the slides. But yeah, no, I think they've hitched their wagons to Donald Trump irreparably. I don't think there's another candidate for them for reasons that we can discuss later. But yeah, I don't think a swamp creature could drain the swamp. Because then that creature will have no place to go. And like I said, he wasn't a traditional politician, but the only thing he was a playboy billionaire celebrity. So, I don't know what made people think he could run the country effectively, like he was so successful in his business and his billions of dollars, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, and so I think one more thing that I wanted to call out in terms of the conundrum piece is in terms of the social justice struggle, the liberation fight. I think among my people, among other so-called white people, one of the mistakes that we make is that we think that Donald Trump, a lot of us think that Donald Trump is in fact the chief obstacle in the struggle for freedom, justice, equality in this country. He creates for us an easy target that if we can just get him out of office, if we can just get him out of the social and political picture, we can, and better yet, if I can just not be Donald Trump as a person, right? Then I'm winning. Then I've taken a step towards justice. I have helped advance the freedom struggle. And in fact, while that's not altogether wrong, just by removing Donald Trump from the equation, that just puts us back where we were. It doesn't actually bring us closer to justice. It doesn't actually undo or address some of the systematic challenges that we have in this country. And so I think for my people, there's a unique conundrum that is, well, at least I'm not Donald Trump, and that's good enough. When in fact, the issues that we have go far deeper than just one person. He's simply revealing to us the hatred that still exists in this country, the vitriol that still exists in this country, and how deeply entrenched so many of us still are in relation to the oppressive systems and structures that have continued to persist in this country. So that's one last thing that I wanted to call out. But with that said, let's move on to the next question. Now, Tim, I know this is a question that you have some thoughts about, and so I want to pull this article up because I know this is one that you were interested to talk a little bit about. So let me cue that up for you. The question here that I'm hoping that we can wrestle with is exactly what is wrong with Donald Trump. And I don't mean that from a mental capacity point of view. We could talk about that. What I mean is what's wrong with his politics? What's wrong with his social and ideological positions that we need to discuss in order to make sure that people understand exactly what kind of person Donald Trump is?
I looked at this article with the utmost scrutiny, and I just came up with the fact that it's just more of the same. It's more information, more misinformation, more miseducation, more misdirection. The welfare vote is the rural America vote. That's where all the welfare recipients are, by and large, is in red state rural America. So Donald Trump is saying in this particular article that the Democrats, he says, have welfare, the welfare vote. And the welfare vote is with the Democrats because the Democrats give them things. Well, the welfare vote is the Republican vote. But can you convince a welfare receiving Republican that That is a dog whistle. No, you can't. No, you can't. I think it's a campaign centuries long of misdirection, misinformation, miseducation, lies, myths, fantasies, fallacies, and BS. Now, Donald Trump, when people look at him, when people looked at him when he first started this whole journey, oh, he's a billionaire. Maybe, maybe not. 3-card Monty with the tax returns during the whole election, 3-card Monty with his finances, paying contractors, he certainly acts like a rich person, but not paying people. It's like a symbol of poverty, I think. But I don't know if he was as rich as he was saying that he was. I just don't believe it, because if he was, why would he not lay it out on the table? Yeah, I've got $4 billion. He kept all his finances a secret for as long as he could, because he didn't have it like he said that he did. The welfare dog whistle is decades old, as it says here in this ad. Reagan did it. They've been doing that. I remember back in the 80s when they used to do attack ads about welfare. There was always a black pair of hands receiving those real, actual paper food stamps, And that has never been the case, that the majority of welfare recipients have been black. It's just never been the case. But this is one of the things that's wrong with Donald Trump and his supporters, his followers, all those who are sympathetic to his cause. They believe the hype. They believe what Donald Trump says, because we've had decades of misinformation to confirm what he's saying. And I think you said it to me, Ike. He validates their ignorance. He validates all the lies. He validates all the miseducation and everything that's being said that's untrue. He validates that for him because he's on television, and he's always been on television, and he's a billionaire, and he's all these things that Americans aspire to be, But I think the case is really fraud, because he's never been as good at the things that people think he's, his billionaire status. We don't really know how it happened. We know he screwed a lot of people. We know he doesn't pay any taxes. We know he doesn't pay his fair share. We know he does everything possible to get over on the people around him, and he's still doing it.
I think some of it. I mean, he's using everything that America has to offer him to his advantage, and I can't say there's anything wrong with that. Like he's him not paying any taxes or anything. He didn't break any laws with that. That's his tax code. That's just saying that he's able to do that. So he's not even wrong with any of those type of things. It's just that it looks bad. The perception of it is bad. The perception of it's bad, but his platform and support for his platform is a lot of people willing to cut off their nose to spite their face. So as you were talking about, the need for welfare or help, whatever, there's a lot of people voting for those things to be cut off, willing to spite their own self for the belief of, so other people can't get this help. So I rather nobody have it to spite them, to spite black people or brown people, and not realizing that they need it also. That makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So you got rural people needing that help for welfare or any subsidies, and they're like, I rather cut it off. I rather not have it for the benefit. So just in case nobody else get it, because also they identify with this wealth and not realizing that you will never be at that level of wealth. And I think also what's going on also, there's this population shift, right? You got those same people, those same rural people, they're realizing that they're becoming a minority, year after year. I think some census came out. There was something about new births came out. Again, it came out for 2020, but every year they were saying that the last few years, for African American and white people, there's been a net negative, a positive. I mean, there was less people born and dying in the last few years, but there's humongous growth in Hispanic people growing. And so, some part about that is that's the fear of white people still in this country. Like at some point, we will be a minority, and so that you got those people being fearful also, and needing somebody to champion to protect them from still having some level of control. So I think he has that pushing a lot of his agendas, whether it be at the forefront or in the background.
Mm, mm, mm. I agree with that. Because fear in this country is palatable. You can see it on people, in people, around people. You can see it in how they react to the presence of the people around. I'm speaking for myself, mostly. It's tangible. It has weight, mass, and density to fear in this country. A lot of people are responding to his rhetoric based on fear. And I think what was the old saying? The only way to rule completely is to rule by fear.
Yeah. But the thing is that, nothing he's saying is new. It's just that now he's really tapped into those people that probably wouldn't have voted prior to. Tapped into those people, white people, the poor white people who thought they didn't have a voice. And he somehow truly identified with them to make them come out and vote. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's unique, because typically maybe they wouldn't vote as with the numbers that they have. Similar to what probably what Obama did in 12 years ago, but he tapped into that. You're losing out. You're losing what America is. Let's make America great again. And that really resonated with them, because now, keep in mind, now they're seeing their numbers dwindle. They're seeing people take something what they thought was theirs, right? Because you're talking about the country. They see people taking what's theirs, and now, okay, how do we get it back? And somebody really,
and I think
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just saying, I think that rural white voters rightly know that the system is rigged against them, and it's rigged even more heavily against Black people and brown people in this country. But let's be clear, the system is in fact rigged, right? Millions and millions of people suffer only because of the way that the system is designed, outside of any character issues, decisions that they've made in their lives. Certainly there's a place to discuss one's personal decisions, but systematically, our economy, our government is designed to leave people behind, right? So it's just a matter of his ability to tap into that frustration and the inability of other elected leaders to do that. But anyway, I want to enlarge this particular slide here, guys, and I want to play for you a clip, because this, I think, also speaks to the conundrum as well of Donald Trump. So here's something that he said maybe about 2 weeks ago. And this is right around the time when his trial was beginning. So he said a lot of people said that's why Black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against me as I'm discriminated. When I did the mugshot in Atlanta, you know who embraced it more than anybody else? The Black people. Right. So here, what I want to do now is I want to share with you some reaction to that comment from Stephen A. Smith, and then Roland Martin's reaction to Stephen A. Smith. So we'll go through about 5 minutes, and then Tim, I'm hoping we can start with you. You can jump in, and then Amari jump right in after that. All right. So here's the clip itself. Let me pull that up, and let's take a listen here.
Despite the counts against them, the indictments against them, being impeached twice and all of this other stuff, he is the presumptive GOP nominee. And you don't seem to have the issues in your favor, you believe. So because of that, you're going to manipulate the system as best as you possibly can to avoid him possibly running for re-election again. That appears to be their strategy.
Stephen A. Smith is back giving terrible political takes.
Here's the problem. What Donald Trump is on trial for is literally the exact same thing his attorney pled guilty on. It says Michael Cohen pleads guilty in Manhattan federal court to 8 counts, including criminal tax evasion and campaign finance violations. If the charges against Trump are bogus, were the charges against Michael Cohen bogus? The facts are the facts. Here we have the attorney for Donald Trump who pled guilty to the charges. That wasn't a Democratic setup. No Democrat made Donald Trump illegally pay off a porn star and use his attorney to hide the payoff because he did not want the voters to know about it. Let me remind Stephen A. and Sean Hannity, this happened before the election because Trump did not want the world to know that he paid off a porn star. This is called a fact.
Roland Martin, friend of the network, has to explain all of this to him.
It's much ado about nothing. To my liberal friends out there, all you're doing is showing that you can't beat them. Issues and
So short-sighted, so misinformed. Beyond embarrassing, honestly.
2020, interfering with the election. How bogus? Donald Trump not call the votes? Oh, get at least 3 people who've already pled guilty who were indicted. So if they're both guilty, one of them was a lawyer. It could be because they realized they were guilty and they agreed to testify against the other defendants, including Trump. You can't call that trial bogus. You can't say it's unfair, the Democrats are going after him. If you break the law, you break the law. This man is not above reproach.
Martin, to his credit, continues debunking Smith's words.
that I've ever had to articulate out of my mouth from a political perspective. But I got to tell you something. As much as people may have been abhorred by Donald Trump's statement weeks ago, talking about how black folks, he's hearing that black folks find him relatable because what he's going through is similar to what black Americans have gone through, he wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. When you see the law enforcement, the court system, and everything else being exercised against him, it is something that black folks throughout this nation can relate to with some of our historic, iconic figures.
That was also a rough moment.
I would have loved to know specifically what historic, iconic figures, because I know Dr. King went to jail. I know Dr. Jim Lawson went to jail. I know that they went to jail, but they did not hold classified documents. They did not pay off porn stars. They did not try to overturn an election. They did not overstate the value of their properties to apply for business loans. So therefore, there literally is no comparison.
Exactly. From Martin. Exactly.
When you're suffering like that, because we know we have.
Stop.
And that's what he articulated.
What's your reaction?
I find this interesting in that it flies in the face of several things. Number one, it flies in the face of presumptive racial groupthink nonsense. I think so-called black people are upset with Stephen A. Smith because he has cozied up as wealthy, influential African-American, so-called black, whatever you want to call them, often do, to the status quo, and started listening to conservative radio, watching conservative news networks, and adapting right-wing, white supremacist talking points. He's parroting Sean Hannity. He's parroting all these right-wing Fox News and Breitbart people that he listens to, because those are the people who he deals with. Those are the people he feels like he relates to, their values, their income levels, their social standards he feels more comfortable with. So right-wing ideology and white supremacist talking points are not limited by your skin color. These are not skin diseases. These are mental and emotional afflictions, socially constructed. So, am I mad at Stephen A. Smith? No, but I am quite disappointed, because he is functioning in what I've come to know as the alternate reality of the right wing status quo in this country. And that is that, sure, all black people can relate to the criminal charges against Donald Trump. I cannot. I have been treated like a criminal, but I have never been an actual criminal. Donald Trump is an actual criminal. And I think that's where Stephen A. Smith gets it wrong. I like my feet to be comfortable, but I won't buy a Donald Trump sneaker just because I'm black. And I think that, again, is kind of the kind of point that Stephen A. Smith is wrong upon. I think there are those who identify with Donald Trump's criminality. They're called criminals. Small time, big time, midway. They're called criminals. They're called thugs and gangsters and all that. That's the problem here, though. The conundrum is, how is it that so many people across so many communities, and cutting a pretty deep swath into the black community at this point, how do we combat love for the stereotype, the gangster, the thug, the anti-hero? How do we combat that? Hollywood has made so many of these anti-heroes, thugs, gangsters that actually win in the end. Stick it to the system. You're right, Dukes. He didn't break no laws. But I'm in a higher tax bracket than most billionaires. You know what I mean? He didn't break no laws, but it still don't make it right. What they do, the billionaire swamp that they all live in, is a really ugly place. And this place where Stephen A. Smith is, it's a really ugly place. And it's based on a whole lot of right-wing media, a whole lot of right-wing talking points. Stephen A. Smith is not having dinner with the likes of us. Never again in his life will he ever have dinner with regular people. He is hobnobbing with sports network executives, none of whom look like us. He's hobnobbing with news network executives, team owners, general managers, most of the time, none of which look like us. So is this nature or is it nurture?
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, if you take the shape, shallow people take the shape of their container. You know what I mean? And that's where he is. That's where he is right now. Roland Martin, who would be, for all intents and purposes, what we think of as so-called black people on our side, which is what we're expecting from Stephen A. Smith, simply because he's black, for him to be on our side, which is the myth of racial groupthink nonsense. It's a difficult place for us to be and for us to watch, but no, he's not going to side with us.
But the thing is that it's not so much that he's siding with, it's like the simplistic okie doke. This is not even complex thinking, and he falls for it. Like, no, he's not being prosecuted because he has the similarities what black and brown people has going through. Now, he did say the FBI is corrupt. And from my standpoint, he's right. The FBI is corrupt. But not for the same reason why I think it's corrupt. because you know what I'm saying. If you expose why it's corrupt and change it, I still would be persecuted. You know, if we changed. But the FBI is corrupt. You see, we're saying that. Yeah, you're right. So it's those type of things that where he think that he has commonality with certain people, not realizing that there's no more complex thought to break that down. You know what I'm saying? And I think this is what the problem is. Like you could say something, and you think we're on the same side, but you realizing that we're not. And so people fall for that and say, "Well, yeah, he is being persecuted. Yeah, he is. He is going to jail. I mean, he does have all these trials for whatever reason." And like you said, because he's a criminal, it has nothing to do with anything else. Because he's a criminal. There's no other. There is no other, connection between him and I outside of he's a criminal.
He's a criminal, but in his eyes, who has done everything basically wrong his whole life, failed his whole life, messed up his whole life, dropped the ball his whole life, but he never had any consequences to any of that. Now he's 70 plus years old, entering his second childhood, and people are telling him, "No, Don, you're wrong." How is he supposed to react to that? And how is rural America supposed to respond to black and brown people and, saying you're wrong, you're a criminal? You know what I mean? Oh, I'm being persecuted. We had a discussion about this, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, how is he supposed to respond? He's never been wrong in his whole life. Nobody's ever told him no in over 70 years.
Right. And never really had the force to apologize for anything that he said. And that's the other thing. Nobody hold him to the fire.
Never.
With consequences. And that's part of it too. That's a level of arrogancy that you're not. And people people love that. So that's how people identify. They want to identify with that type of a winner. Not realizing that.
Yeah. All our superheroes are billionaires. Tony Stark, Batman, the Green Arrow, they're all billionaires. These people could do no wrong. Billionaires are automatically superheroes. Jeff Bezos went to space, could have solved U.S. poverty, hunger, went to space instead with 6 of his friends.
Right.
They're heroes. Right. They can do no wrong.
Can't do no wrong when they're wrong. That's the funny thing. Can do no wrong when they're wrong. That's crazy.
It's nuts. It's nuts.
Okay, so here's another point too, which is that two things can be true right now. I'm going to state this first. I believe it's true that Donald Trump is in fact a crook.
Right.
And every single one of the things he's been accused of, he is guilty of, or at least most likely guilty of. More probably than not, Donald Trump is guilty of every single thing he's been accused of. That's what I believe. I will say this, however, two things can be true. He can be an absolute crook, and the system can be going after him. What worries me about what Stephen A. said is that he seems to be suggesting that the charges that Trump faces are just made up. In the same way that black folks have been railroaded for decades, if not centuries, by this rancid criminal justice system, right? So he's making the points together when in fact he should be making them more exclusively. That's number one. Number two is that I know for certain that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of white talking heads who are saying the exact same thing that Stephen A. Smith said in that clip. The only reason why it's important here and why it's catching on at all in the larger social commentary is because Stephen A. is black, right? If typical white man hosting the morning show in Boise, Idaho, radio talk show said that same thing, no one would care. But because it's Stephen A. Smith who has an elevated social standing, and because he's a black man, he then gets on to Sean Hannity's show and spews this nonsense, right? And so it shouldn't matter that Stephen A. is black and saying this, because to your point, Tim, a black man and a white man, neither one has more or less obligation to the truth or to justice. There's an obligation from us all to serve justice, right? Regardless of our skin color. Absolutely. We have to get away from that kind of prescriptive racial thinking. However, Sean Hannity is the one that said, oh, here's a black man saying that Donald Trump's struggles are just like that of Black America. And so it's Sean Hannity, the person who wants to be colorblind, who wants to challenge critical race theory and any discussion of race in our past or our racialized experiences in this country, put Stephen A. Smith on the air solely because his skin happens to be brown. Right. So to me, that's the So I don't know. I'll give you guys a last word before we move on to that third question.
Well, I'll just say this. Samuel L. Jackson played the best Stephen A. Smith type in Django. They've always existed. They've always been around. Stephen A. Smith has cozied up to the status quo, and he is the definition of House Negro. But it's not because he is no, he is House Negro. He's in the house. He's in the house. He's in there, and he thinks because he is in the house with the status quo, he is a member of the status quo, and that's, I think, his downfall and his greatest mistake under these circumstances. He is not a member of the status quo, but he is parroting their cause like a loyal subject. And I think that's a problem with a lot of these Negroes out here in politics and entertainment. He's an entertainer. He's not a politician. He's not a professor of law. He's not a pundit. He's an entertainer. But, those are, according to Malcolm X, the people that we've always put all our stock in the so-called Black community. The Stephen A. Smiths and, the Dick Gregory's and, it's always entertainers that we listen to. So, it's a conundrum to say the least. Thank you for that title.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. But at the same time, you think you want to investigate, like, I think if you could just say, like, he's an anomaly, Stephen A. Smith, like some of the other, you want to question maybe some of the other African Americans who like truly support. I think we were having the conversation earlier about, like, there's a difference between being a Republican and a Trump supporter, right? You know what I'm saying? And like before even Trump came to this point, I think the Republican Party was putting money into gaining more acceptance within the Black community because they seen what Obama has done and how it galvanized so many people. And I think that was the right thing to do because you've seen such a polarization within their party. There were none, right? And not realizing there were some people who believe in some of these ideas, right? And I think they had an opportunity, but they threw it away at the start of his second term, Obama's second term. They had the opportunity to gain some African Americans and make it more diverse, right? So, but when they attached a wagon to this one individual and his thinking, I think it totally lost a lot of it. Totally, I mean, lost a lot of African Americans. They left the party, but you want to know what's in the mind of those that stayed. Yeah, they really are. They really are like, I really support this man. I really support his ideas, and that's what I mean. I want to know, like, because it's like you see how he doesn't jive with you really. You can say he can say what he says, but you see how his policies totally goes against everything that could be a benefit for you. I just don't get how they support him.
Yeah. True, because they recognize him. I think rural America and Trump supporters recognize him in themselves. He's that guy you want to have a beer with. Inarticulate, dull, normal, mediocre intelligence, melancholy vocabulary, not somebody who's going to overwhelm you with big words like vitriol and presumptive. Trump's going to talk to you like a human being, and they recognize themselves in that. And Trump is not all that intelligent, and they see themselves in that too. You have to dumb it down in America. You use too big a word, especially as a so-called Black person, you become a pariah immediately. You string too many sentences together too successfully, then you're talking outside your culture. You know what I mean? Donald Trump is one of them. They recognize the C student in Donald Trump, you know, the underachiever in Donald Trump. They see that in themselves. And there you have it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and he's a billionaire, so it's even better.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If he can do it, so can I.
I never thought about that.
That's just elaborating a little bit further on Tim's thought about that. Like, here's a guy that talks the way I talk, and look what he did with his life, right? And any challenge to that narrative then becomes someone going after him. It becomes Trump as a martyr, right? I think Tim will be back in just a second, but here are just a couple things that I know we had planned to run through. So Amari, if you want to react to any of this, just jump right in. Otherwise, we'll get to the final question. But one of the other things we wanted to touch on with respect to Donald Trump and what is wrong with him as a political candidate, as a presidential candidate, is his deep level of corruption and incompetency. We understand, well, most of us understand that politics in this country are fundamentally corrupt. And that's part of the reason why 360 Collective exists in the first place, right? Is to try to counter that and to raise that up and propose ways to improve our world and our country and ourselves, right? So here's just an example of the depth of the corruption. Total conflicts to date. This was gathered by the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. 2,300 conflicts to date from Donald Trump and his administration. This was tallied when he was still in office. So there were more going right up to the last day, and speaks nothing to the January 6th insurrection, right? This is just from his 4 years in office. And then another way to look at that is that from his administration, there were 215 indictments. Compare that to who had been the most corrupt president in the history of this country, Richard Nixon. His administration suffered 76 indictments. So about a third as many as Donald Trump. And Donald Trump himself, this number here compiled by the India Times, this number is not even right. The number now is in the low 90s, if I'm not mistaken. But they compiled a list of 78 charges that Trump was facing, and this was in the middle of 2023. That number has since grown. So that's one of the things that we have to be very open and honest about when we talk about Donald Trump. The depth of his corruption sometimes, I think, is lost on us, and it's a talking point in a conversation. We move past it, but we really need to stop and appreciate just how deeply corrupt and incompetent Donald Trump was and is, right, as a person and as a president. The other thing, and we won't go all into this, is that Trump has a team of intellectuals who are right now working on crafting his policy for potentially his reelection this year. And the policies that are being drafted, that are being conceived, that are being promoted are being drafted by white nationalists, by racists, by business people and corporate interests who could not care less for the average person in this country. And again, we won't go all into it, but we want for you to do your own study on these topics. We want you to look into something called the American First Legal Fund, or America First Legal Fund, and then also something called Project 2025. If you want to know more about the policies that he's planning to enact and the ways that he plans to use the Supreme Court if he gets reelected, all you have to do is read up on these two institutions, these two think tanks, to understand what is in store. We'll come back to this perhaps at another time, but I want to put it out there for anyone listening so that they can take from this conversation something that they can learn and study more about on their own. And then, of course, another parallel that people like to draw is between Joe Biden's handling of classified documents and Donald Trump's. And so this is something that I thought was interesting for us to make sure that we at least display a little bit. We don't need to go into all the detail, but there are some serious differences between the two things that are being two things at hand when it comes to classified documents. And then again, this is just the number of people who, while Trump was president, actually started and then resigned in one of his administrative offices in his cabinet. You can see that his presidency was so dysfunctional that there were many more, hundreds more people who came and went as part of his White House cabinet than any of the other recent presidents. So again, we won't stick with this too long, but I wanted to call it out. But now the last question, and Amari, I'm interested for you to jump in on this one first. The last question is, well, we know that the system is broken, right? Regardless of Joe Biden or Donald Trump, we acknowledge that the system is broken, right? And by broken, we mean that the system is working in exactly the way that it is intended to, right? Like at some point, and there are researchers who have asserted that at some point you cannot say that the system is intended to do something that it's not doing. You have to acknowledge at some point that the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. So when we say that the system is broken, what we mean is that it is not working for most people. It works for a precious few. So in that respect, the system is working. But as far as we're concerned, Amari, Isaac, Timothy, and others, the system is broken, right? So there's a belief of, well, why participate in the system? Why vote at all? What's your first reaction to that, Amari? How do you
well, first, I mean, to go over a lot of stuff you talked about, just think about it. So I would just say in some bit, maybe he might have been one of the greatest presidents of all time. Now, I say that because I'm saying it because let's look at what's going on now. Currently, he's out of office, and still we are fighting against some of his policies. And so as a leader, your goal is to make sure that your policies, your goal is to make sure that whatever your direction you want the country to go in, or whether it's your house or whatever, it stays in that lane, that area, even after you're gone, right? And we're still dealing with some of his mess, and our country was still going in the direction that he wanted, even in his absence, right? So when he took on the slogan of "Make America Great Again," I think he had the motivation of Reagan in 79, right? I think that, God, I mean, he's gonna have a legacy just like Reagan did, and but out of 4 years instead of 8, because look at his impact on the Supreme Court. Look at his impact on state courts. Look at the decisions that these courts are making, right? So even in his absence, he's changed what the courts thought. Even in his absence, we're talking about movements. In his absence, we're talking about movements to the point where we're still going towards that direction. I think that so. For if I was a Republican, if I thought that way, he you know what I'm saying, that I don't care 100 years from now, it's going to be, guys, this is the guy, right? It's going to be like, this is the guy who made all these changes, and so he could be looked as one of the greatest. Now, so the thing is that you want to sit back and say, why vote? Is that it's such, it goes against so much to what people that maybe so many people believe in, that you gotta vote to change something, to change the direction of the country. Sometimes you can sit back and say, maybe not this time, maybe because they're so close, into viewpoints, or I can't really judge. I can maybe stick it out. This one is because everything's so polarized. you have no other choice but to get in it. You got to get in it because either you agree with the direction of the country or you don't. Right. So it's so it's you got to make a choice. Either it's like I guess you can't think about the Civil War and what side you want to choose. You can't sit back and divide. Be straddle the middle. You got to make a choice. And so it's fine to make a choice. It's fine to take a loss too, but you have to make a choice now because you see how it's going in his absence. So you see how what's going on in his absence. Now imagine how things would go if he had control. So now you agree.
What do you think?
If you agree with him, then you vote him in. If you don't agree with him, we have to fight against the attack.
I think.
What do you think, Tim? How do you answer this question about the system is broken? We agree that the system is broken, right? It isn't working, or it's working for exactly those whom it is intended to serve. But so in that respect, why vote at all? How do you answer that question?
I would just start off by saying that I have, for a long time, been suspicious of the motives of people who run for public office. Why would you invite that shite storm into your life? That's the first thing. As far as the system being broken and whether or not to vote, I heard one guy say if voting worked, they'd make it illegal. I vote. I try to do my best, but Donald Trump, when he won the presidency, he won the Electoral College, which in effect puts the person who got the fewest votes in the White House. Puts a loser in the White House. And I think that your vote does count, but there are situations when it can't. And I think that question is completely valid for a lot of people because I voted for Obama twice. He never signed a bill, a policy, passed a law, tax code, nothing that had anything to do with anything that would touch my life. Donald Trump has touched my life more than Barack Obama did because Donald Trump caused this hardcore racial backlash in the police force, in regular front desk lifetime fitness employees and librarians. All of a sudden now everybody is a Donald Trump supporter and they're going to piss you off and say, that's why I voted for Donald Trump. I've seen that in my life. I didn't see anything like that in relation to what Obama did. Obama never did anything that affected me personally. But Donald Trump's rhetoric, his bigotry, his narcissism, his hatred have affected more of my life than anything that Barack Obama ever did. I voted for him twice. I'd vote for him again over Trump, but I think we need to exercise our constitutional right to vote. I think we need to do that, but I don't think we should expect that we're going to get everything that we asked for. Like in Detroit a few years back, I don't know, they came in, just replaced the whole government. We don't like the way are you guys familiar with this? We don't like the way you guys are doing things. Yeah. You're out.
Yeah.
You're out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think we can expect realistically in a country as fair and open and honest as the United States for our vote to really get us what we're asking for.
Right. Right.
And as far as, remember, Dukes, you said, the FBI is corrupt, always has been, especially in relation to the Black community. Always has been. Yeah. So when he called the FBI corrupt and rural America responded with, the FBI is corrupt, it's because they're attacking their representative.
Right.
And when
keep that energy.
Yeah.
Keep that energy. Keep that energy after Donald Trump goes to jail.
Yeah. When they're crawling in and out of somebody like Bill Cosby's behind, the FBI is totally righteous and above board. R. Kelly, whoever you want. Completely righteous and above board. But now that they're crawling up their representatives behind and making their representative look bad, then something is wrong, which brings me back to my larger point. They live in an alternate reality. These things that they think, the racist dog whistles about welfare and, these things that they think, these white supremacist talking points and Sean Hannity and all these people, these outlandish things that make you go, when they say it, they think it's real. They think it's valid. And you can't tell them otherwise, and that's the conundrum for me right there. How do you convince somebody who knows beyond the shadow of a doubt that the sky is green and the ocean has no bottom and they will kill you?
Right.
If you present evidence to the contrary, how do you?
Right.
And the funny thing is, the people that told them that know it's a lie. That's the funny thing. The people who told them know it's the opposite, but they know that these people are stupid enough to fall for it. And it's like they go with it's that's the thing. I mean, he knows what he's doing, and he knows what his audience is.
Right. He is the law and order president, except for him.
Yeah.
Except for him.
And people love him for that. And when you say that is a fascist idea, people think that you're just using the word fascist in some fanciful,
right.
made up way, right? Like just to be dramatic. But that is what fascism is. It's when you enforce the law or make laws up or reinterpret laws to go after your political enemies, and you pardon yourself, or you yourself don't follow any of those laws, right? I mean, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. And it's fascinating how many people will overlook that.
I mean, it's so big though. How can you overlook it?
Because it is the dream. It's like Tim has said before, it is the dream. He's feeding a dream to people who are starved for imagination. That's what it is. They would rather believe that than to acknowledge just how terrible he is and how terribly corrupt our system is and how deeply exploited we all are, right? Yeah. That the dream, it's like the Matrix. It's like, I would rather, remember in the first Matrix, the dude that was like, I know this steak isn't real, but it's still when it hits my lips. And he said to the Matrix, after I deliver you, Neo, I want you to put me back under, and I don't ever want to wake up again. Never wake me up again. Right? And I mean, that's what we're dealing with right now. And Democrats who claim to be the voice of the people are not themselves invested in truly helping people, right? So this graph, which we had prepared, let me just show you guys again. So like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are far more alike than they are different. So like look in the middle there, unlimited military spending, follow Wall Street's bidding, spying on everyone, right? These are things that both parties get behind consistently. Tim, you talked about how easily homelessness or poverty could be eradicated. The money that we just spent on Ukraine and Israel, that could end homelessness. You could end homelessness. It would be a thing of the past if those billions of dollars were allocated to people who were homeless.
Instead, we have the Supreme Court debating on how to criminalize homelessness.
Absolutely, right on, Tim.
Yeah.
So neither, and so it's here's real. I'm going to be real quick, Tim. Then I want to hand it off to you. But like, here's another way to think about Biden and Trump, right? So at the top of this graph is an authoritarian political approach. At the bottom is something very democratic. On the far right is a market economy, meaning laissez-faire capitalism. To the far left, their planned economy. We're talking about something that is more socialist in nature, right? Donald Trump and Joe Biden are almost next to each other. When we analyze their policies according to political approach and economy, they're in the same quadrant. I mean, and we're not endorsing Cornel West, but just for reference, someone like Cornel West who's running for president, you can see where he is, right? The other difference is in their social beliefs. So we're talking about abortion and things like gay marriage and critical race theory and things of that nature. Here's where these three are on the social spectrum, right? You have Donald Trump, who's close to being as conservative as can be. Arguably, he's even further to the right than what is shown here. You have Joe Biden, who's right in the middle, and then you have Cornel West, who's to the far left. So Biden and Trump are almost the same person. Like, they're almost the same person. But I think that they're almost the same person. They're not the same person. And so I think exercising a vote is still a worthwhile tactic. But to build upon what you said, Tim, it cannot be the only thing we do. We can't simply believe that voting for one candidate over another is the cure to our social ills, right? So in full transparency, I'm in a state where my Illinois is going to go Democratic, right? So my vote, I'm going to vote most likely for Cornel West. If he stays in the race, I'm going to vote for Cornel West. If I were in Ohio, where I know every vote's going to count towards either Joe Biden or Donald Trump winning the state, I'd vote for Joe Biden. Like, I would definitely do that because they are both part of the same system, but Joe Biden is different than Donald Trump. I have no misgivings about that. That does not make me a Democrat. It does not make me a supporter of Joe Biden. It means that I recognize the political reality. And I think from our point of view as a group, it means that voting can't be the only thing that we do, right?
I'd
like
to jump in. Could you bring up that graphic again where you showed the similarities between the two parties?
Absolutely. The first one?
Right down the middle, all those similarities between the two parties. So you pull that up. I want to imagine, if you will, an American eagle, right? The bald eagle, right? Right down the middle is the breast of that eagle. And on the right wing, you got the Republican Party. On the left wing, you got the Democratic Party. But they're still wings of the same bird, right? It's like when you go to court, the prosecutor and the defense attorneys, they talk about the barbecue they went to, and they laugh and they have a good time together. And they're like, damn, that's supposed to be my lawyer. You know what I mean? That dude's supposed to be his enemies. No, they all work together. They're two wings of the same bird, right? They're not about what they say they're about, campaign promises and all these things they say they're going to do. They very rarely do. The status quo usually wins out, you know? I really understand the importance of exercising a vote, but I don't understand what it is I'm actually going to get all the time. That's one thing. And as far as the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, I think we all in this discussion know that historically they've switched roles. I think in somewhere in the 1950s, you know, or 60s, they switched. The Republican Party used to be the party of, you know, people who look like me, and it was the Democrats who were. So I think it's a question of marketing as well. You know, who you market to. You know, when you have allies like Stephen A. Smith and Ice Cube, and, you know, and you can put these people out front and say, look at these black people. They support me. Why don't you? You know, I remember when I was in school, I had a real big problem with the way folks talked about William Shakespeare being the end all be all of theater, you know, and he came along and this is what he did. He's the greatest ever of all time author. And I'm like, hold up. There was a lot of stuff going on before he hit the scene, you know, but you speak out against that common knowledge, status quo knowledge, you know, then you become the pariah. You know, people are talking about Donald Trump on the right wing of the bird, like he is the savior of this nation. And many of them can't be convinced otherwise. And it's that campaign of centuries old misinformation, lies, miseducation, you know, that we're fighting against. And that's what has created this conundrum. You're like, how can you stand there and let that fly out of your mouth about Donald Trump and believe it. Oh, liberal judges, this, that, the other thing. None of this stuff is real. They honestly believe it. They honestly believe it. And there's a contingent of them that are willing to kill you to support their belief patterns, So, the only way to rule completely is to rule by fear. And I think people are afraid. I think, maybe there's some fear in the Black community too, as far as what might happen if Donald Trump is not elected. My nephew, 35, 36, 37 years old, strong Black man, afro this big, wears cornrows, strong Black kids, Black wife, Trump supporter, died in the wool, Trump supporter. Wants to move to Nebraska because, they share his values and his views on society and humanity, hardcore. What better example of a conundrum could there be than that? This is my nephew. I know him well. Big old afro, you know what I mean?
But it's so hard. It's like, when you see that, the thing is that if your nephew goes to a Trump rally, he doesn't know if they're gonna embrace him or get kicked out.
He knows he's not welcome.
He doesn't.
He don't care.
He doesn't know if they may hang him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, all those things are possible.
But he listens to white conservative right wing media. He has,
but going there, he can get beat up. Him and his wife can get beat up.
Yeah, but that doesn't affect his logic, because these are the people who share his values and his beliefs.
But they don't value. The thing is that, but they don't value you as an individual, as a family, and that's what
I was saying about Stephen A. Smith. You might be speaking for the status quo, but you are not status quo. This is what I try to tell my nephew. You might want to move to that community, but you are not of that community.
Yeah,
and you will suffer as a result of it. You might share their beliefs, their values, their worldview, but they don't share yours.
There's a big difference, right? Exactly.
Big difference.
Yeah.
But you can't, there's no way, it's when you're talking to someone who believes to their core that they are right, you have to handle that situation with kid gloves, and that's the conundrum for me. Like, these people really believe these points are valid, that welfare is a Black thing when it's never been, and that the FBI statistics about Black people are above reproach, and they've never been. Police treatment of Black people is fair, and and it's never been. But they're convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that these things are real. It's an alternate reality. I've often called it a socially constructed mental disease, because sometimes some of the things that they say, you're like, damn, it's the equivalent of snails have pails and I'm green, so there, and you have to go silent for a minute and be like, what? Did he really just say that? Did he really just say something that ignorant? And there is no rebuttal, because it's hard to fix stupid. You know what I mean? There's an old saying in the military, you can't polish a turd. So that's the conundrum for me. And I love what we do. But there's Sean Hannity would sit in the middle of all of us and shake his head the whole time, no matter how much logic, how many facts, how much knowledge we produce. He is never. I won't speak in absolutes because I get in trouble when I do that. But it's very unlikely that he's going to see anything our way.
But the thing is, like, but his views on Trump was the total opposite, right? The thing is that he stated how much he was an idiot or whatever. He had those things are recorded, how he truly felt about him. But they feet so much in the sand, they feel like they gotta. They gotta, go with it.
He's the best chance. He's the best chance that party has. The party itself is bereft of any agenda that is at all exciting or invigorating to most people. And I'm not saying that if it wasn't for Trump that the party would collapse, because I don't think that. But I mean, keep it in context. The guy is facing almost 100 criminal counts.
Yeah, right.
And he's right now in many polls the front runner to become the next president.
Exactly.
I mean, that is, he has such a hold on the imagination of so many people in this country. It's not even just an issue of like white supremacy. It's not even just that. It is that, but it isn't only that. He has a special twinkle about him that absolutely enamors people.
A twinkle.
And I think it goes back to what we said before about like the way that he speaks, and he's a billionaire and he's been on TV and he sleeps with these supermodels and he does this and he's got buildings and what have you, right? Like the average guy making $10 an hour who constantly catches the overnight shift at his job and cannot ever catch a break and needs to work 60 hours just to make ends meet, wants that life, right?
They want to be, they would much rather be Donald Trump than us.
That's right. That's right. And so he delivers something that the average, say, Republican candidate cannot deliver, and has never, I'd argue, has never delivered. Not at least in our lifetime. I mean, maybe Ronald Reagan to an extent, but I'd say even beyond Ronald Reagan, because Donald Trump is, I don't know. I mean, it's another conversation. I was going to compare their politics, but now's not the time for that.
Donald Trump is a cult of personality, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
They like his personality. They identify with him. I said all this before. They identify with him. I'd like to have a beer with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is going to tell them exactly what they want to hear because he knows what it is. He knows the country that he lives in. He knows the politics, racial and otherwise, of the country that he lives in. And he knows how to manipulate people. Brilliant, greatest president of all time? Maybe, maybe not. Greatest con man to ever gain the presidency? Absolutely. Absolutely. Donald Trump has got the 3 cups with the walnut under one of them, and he is schooling the heck out of people all over the country every day. Got them flim-flam, bamboozled, hoodwinked, And it's tough. I know some Black Trump supporters, at least 3. 2 of them from Staten Island, New York, where I used to live. And 4. And one of them asked me, besides racism, what else can you say about it? What about his policies? His policies with this, his policies with that, But the policy of racism, white supremacy, bigotry, that's all I really need. What else do you need? I said this, a person of color or a woman, for that matter, white or otherwise, who votes for Donald Trump is the axe, is the tree voting for the axe because the handle is made of wood. You know what I mean? We had the sexist aspect of his existence as far as a reason not to vote for him. And in my notes, I thought I can't speak to that. That's on the women who vote for him anyway, to speak to his sexism. You know what I mean? It's certainly uncomfortable to watch. If this was an HR situation, we could go to HR on Donald Trump if we worked with him, because what he does makes me uncomfortable, but the women who vote for him against their own best interests, that's for them to speak on, and the conundrum is actually there. I think it's the stereotype of the anti-hero, the Wolf of Wall Street and the guy who gets it done. No matter what he has to do, no matter how many old ladies' lunch money he has to steal, he makes his $1 billion, and that's what America loves. Make it no matter what. Fake it till you make it if you have to. No, I'm not showing you my talent.
So I mean, and I can't believe we didn't talk about that earlier, but it's almost like he is probably the purest manifestation that we've had in the White House of how capitalism works. He's the purest manifestation of that, right? Because he's mediocre. He hasn't actually earned any of the money that he's gotten. He fell ass backwards into privilege, right? White privilege and otherwise. And he doesn't work for a dime. And yet he's not as wealthy as he states, but he's still wealthy, right?
Right.
And his allegiance and loyalty to materialism, to wealth and everything. I mean, it is, now that I think about it, I can't think of of another president who was more aggressively a capitalist than Donald. I mean, he didn't even separate himself from his business interests when he did become president. Y'all remember this in 2016?
Yeah.
There was a controversy about every president, separates themselves from their companies and investments and what have. He was like, "No, I'm not doing that."
I'm not.
Yeah. And I mean, there are pages and pages and documents of how his daughter and his son and his son-in-law all use their positions within the White House to make money for themselves. I mean, there was a day that Ivanka Trump, was that the one that was in the White House with him, or was that I know there's two daughters. The one that was with him in the White House.
Ivanka, yeah, because she's
okay, yeah. So the same day that President Xi Jinping visits the White House, she signs a multi-million-dollar marketing deal with an agency, a marketing agency, I believe it was, from China, that was part of the trip. So it's like, yeah, y'all come on by the White House and let's sign this multi-million-dollar deal. I mean, that's so capitalist, right? I mean, that's pure unadulterated capitalism. And I think that's part of the dream that so many people in this country love, is that can be me someday.
Not knowing it's further from the truth, right?
No, you're way closer to the truth.
Cannot.
You're way closer to the dude who asked you for $1 this morning that you walked past on the concrete. You're way closer to being him than you will ever be in your life. You can work 80 hours a week until you're 95 years old. You won't ever sniff. You won't so much as sniff your way onto one of Donald Trump's properties. And it's not because you did anything wrong. It's because that's how the system is designed, right? So anyway, I don't know what you
broke up. What'd you say?
I said, you guys take the last word. I know we're.
Go ahead, Dukes.
No, I think that I think when this conversation started, it was about. I know we have to make a choice, and I think some part of that is it's hard to figure out what choice we're going to make sometimes, but and I it could have been 4 years ago when I think when we started, I was more or less saying, yeah, I'm really not I don't hold to that you got to vote. I'm not. That's not my thing. But this time is a choice that we got to realize that if we are desiring our country to be a certain way, we got to exercise these rights. We got to make sure that there's certain people that we believe in are going to work for our behalf, and know who those people are. And more importantly, know who those people are not. And right now is a situation to realize who they're not, who's not going to be. Those people are going to work on our behalf, and those people who are not, make sure they're not there. I think this is not a situation of voting for who we want, we're voting for who we don't want. And so for this time, it's so much who I don't want. And then for me, we go from there. But for me, I'm looking at who I don't want to support. So go ahead, Tim. You got something?
Yeah, I think this and everything else we've talked about goes back to a lot of misinformation, miseducation, lies, myths, fantasies. Most of what Donald Trump talks about is lies and misdirections. The article that he most recently did with Time fact-checked it and found 32 lies in it, the information that he gave. But Donald Trump, I guess the debate becomes, does he believe what he's saying? Or does he know that he's lying? I think your position was he knows he's lying. They know they're lying. But they know that these people are also stupid enough to believe everything that they say. I think the opposite, and there was another thing we had in there about political correctness. I wanted to address that real quick. It's the same from the 80s when it was political correctness. Now we call it woke. You know what I mean? These things that we're trying to address in DEI and all this stuff that we're calling woke now, we've done this before. We've been down this road before. So we are happily immersed in a quagmire that is more of the same. Jingoism, yellow journalism, and all this hate speech and dog whistles is about as American as apple pie and Christmas, But I think we're embroiled in a situation now that is perilous as far as our votes are concerned. And I think we do need to get out there and exercise our right to vote, but I don't think we should expect to get everything we want. Like Donald Trump lost the election fair and square and convinced millions of people that it was stolen. And as far as they're concerned, their vote was stolen. You can't tell them anything else. No matter how much evidence you present, truth, facts, nothing. My vote was stolen. It doesn't count, So, we're in a tough one, gentlemen. We got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, I guess just one real quick to that point, Tim. People say, well, I don't want to be, I'm not responsible because I didn't vote. Or they'll say, oh, you voted for him? That makes you responsible.
Mm-hmm.
The miss here is that you're responsible either way. You live in this country. If you're a citizen in this country, you're responsible. So you're responsible whether you vote or don't. Use the power you do have in your vote to express your desires and beliefs, and recognize that your vote by itself is not enough to bring about the change that we all want, that we all deserve, and go out and get it the day after that you vote, right? So I think that's a good place to close down. But I guess our next conversation is going to be coming up soon, right? More to come on that.
I totally agree. Yes, sir.
More to come. I think I'd like to put some energy into discussing the misinformation campaigns and miseducation that have created this hardcore alternate reality on the right wing of the United States, of that bird that is the American eagle. I mean, they think these things are valid that they're saying, and I think there's a road to that point mentally that I'd like to investigate.
All right, so we'll pick that one up sometime soon then, right, brothers?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Great building with you guys as always, and we'll see you all in a couple.
All right.
With us. Real Powers people.